is there going to be a season 2, I guess? Like, you end on this cliffhanger because these shows are normally made self-contained. You get 6 episodes and you're good and you're set up for the next movie. Are there any plans for anything forward going forward with her?
I have a feeling, that we will probably see these characters and these events carry on somehow, somewhere, in some shape or form. That's all I can say.
Ah, man, you're a better liar than Andrew Garfield. I can see it all over your face. There's something in there. Hey, welcome back to the ScreenCrush Crossover Universe podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Heather Antos.
And I'm here with my co-host, Ryan Airy. What a coincidence. How you doing, Ryan?
Heather, we got a big one today. Now, see, this is our first episode, right? It was not intended to be our first episode.
It wasn't.
We were going to stack them up. And then we got interest from this guy who wants to come on and talk to us.
Yeah.
We have the producer of such films as Run, Missing, Space Jam 2, Sinners, and the show Ironheart. We have Sev Ohanian coming on in a little bit. I am blown away by that.
I can't wait to go into the lore of Space Jam 2, personally.
I mostly want to talk to him about Space Jam 2, even though, spoiler alert, I've not seen a Space Jam.
I can't. You told me this last week, and every single time I can't. How did you grow up in the 90s having not seen a Space Jam?
I grew up, you asked me this the other day, and it took me a while to think of this, right? And by the way, when Sev comes on, one thing we are going to talk to him about, in addition to Space Jam 2, is how in the hell my name appeared in the show Ironheart. Am I MCU canon? And I have a lot of questions about my MCU character that I need for the wiki. So I want to have that filled out. No, but I grew up 25 miles from the closest movie theater. So for me to go to the movies meant like begging an adult to take me to the movies. And maybe Space Jam 2 wasn't quite their Space Jam, if you know what I mean.
But
at least for the time.
Michael Jordan, Bugs Bunny, The Martians. I mean,
I know.
Wow.
I know. And I love Bugs Bunny, and I was a kid in the 90s, so I loved Michael Jordan. It just never happened.
Wow.
And it's so weird to say that because Ironheart has the strong association with Chicago.
I was going to say, there's a nice crossover there. Yeah.
I know. And I followed, like, I was super, you kind of absorb who's around you. And in my hometown, I grew up around, like, my family were athletes. I was not an athlete, but everybody else was. So I absorbed all that, like Jordan coming back and number 45 and all that stuff. Like, I watched way more sports then than I do now. And I just never came across Space Jam. But it's also busy. I was busy then. I'm busy now. Okay. I don't have time to watch all the jams when they come out. Well, what's new with you? What's happening at IDW?
Oh gosh, it is in pure Comic-Con prep mode. San Diego Comic-Con is going to be upon us in less than a month, and so it's pretty busy prepping for that. For folks who are going to be at San Diego Comic-Con, come stop by our booth. We're having pinball this year at our booth. It's very exciting. Yes. So
are you hosting any panels this year?
I have 5 panels I'm moderating this year. So
yeah, but which one's your favorite? I guess is what's the really good one?
What's the really good one
you're actually looking forward to?
The one I'm most excited about is called Beneath the Comics, and it's all exploring the IDW Dark, our horror line of comics. So we're going to be talking about the upcoming Event Horizon prequel comic, our Sleepy Hollow, Twilight Zone, all sorts of fun, spooky things. So really, really excited to debut all of that material.
The thing I love about IDW is you guys, I guess, are best, and at least I first came aware of IDW because of your licensing, Ronin, all the Star Trek stuff. You do some amazing stuff there. But the original stuff's great too. Like, you have some original horror stuff that's genuinely scary, and I'm not one to get scared when I pick up a funny book, but you guys do great work over there.
Yeah, I mean, Lock and Key, right, which just wrapped up its run on Netflix on the shows there. 30 Days of Night, right, by Steve Niles, Ben Temple-Smith.
Yep.
Became that great film starring Josh Hartnett in the early 2000s. And last year we just had our big debut of Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees by Patrick Horvath, the sequel series, which is coming out this summer as well. So a lot of great original horror. We're not just turtles.
And a lot of work on your part. I mean, that's the thing too. Like, I do a lot. Like, I have like 5 jobs at the channel, but it seems like everything that must cross your desk, not to mention keeping up with scripts and NDAs and stuff like that. You have an insane job. You have so many people's dream job. So it's always cool to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think that here we're just in prep mode, man.
Yeah.
Like we have so much. Like we're looking at next month,
Mhm.
and we're
Oh,
so
Superman,
excited.
Fantastic Four, you've got so much.
And yeah, and it sounds like it kind of sounds like you and I are just trying to plug our shit. But the fact is, I think we just work so much that when we have conversations, it's like, oh yeah, and I'm working on this, and oh yeah, I'm working on this, and Jurassic World too. Like
Yeah.
I'm a big
Yeah.
dinosaur fan. Yeah. Although I never saw Jurassic Park, the first one, just never got around to it.
Have you never seen the original?
No, I'm
Oh,
kidding.
thank
I'm kidding. I'm
God.
trying to do a thing. I thought you would. I was waiting for some kind of reaction, and what I got was absolute, total stunned silence and disbelief. And I could feel your respect for me dropping. Like I could see it in your eyes. You're like, I got to get out of this podcast. This is not the way
It's
to
like,
go.
I thought Ryan was cool, man.
We should. I think we should mention something we're going to do later on. It's a segment that we're going to do
Yeah.
either with Sev or after Sev leaves. He's a busy guy. He's got other stuff to do, but we have a little segment. Why don't you tell him about it?
Yeah, we've got our nerd hot take at the end called Hear Me Out, an opportunity
Hear me out.
for Ryan to convince us of his nerdy hot take, whether it be pop culture based, industry based, or just fun character based. And then I'll throw one in there too.
Not just me. No, it's Heather as well. Like we
Yeah.
both are going to come at you guys. I appreciate you putting the onus on me to come up with a controversial take.
Well, I was first
I'll
last
tell you-
time, so it's
Oh, that's true. That's true. That's true. I guess I have to remember what mine is. I think I jotted it down to you earlier. Now I have to like cheat and look at my notes. But no, I mean, look, things are good. We're super busy, but I've got a great team here
Yeah.
at ScreenCrush. A lot of help. Doug is no help. Frankly, he's one of his bosses who just lays there and expects you to do all the work and takes all the credit. We may have a cameo from Doug here in a little bit. I don't know. He's not feeling too well, so
Aw.
we'll see what happens. Yeah, allergies. Summer
the
allergies got him.
worst.
Yeah.
Speaking of great team members, should we bring on our special guest of the day?
Oh, I think we definitely
Yeah.
should. So our guest today, and I should go on the record here. I can't believe this is happening. I had a call with this guy a couple hours ago, and he's like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm weirded out. I'm flat weirded out that I'm talking to the guy who produced Sinners, who produced Ironheart, Space Jam 2, Run, Missing, and a million other things. The guy's IMDb page it's heavy. It makes your phone heavier when you look at it. We have Sev Ohanian.
Woo!
Hello, Sev. How the hell are you here talking to us right now? It's so good to see you and meet you.
Man, you're crazy, Ryan. What's up, Heather? I'm the one who's starstruck, man. Like Ryan, your voice is a constant in my house because I love watching you guys' channel and just soaking in all the details you guys take all the time to find. So trust me, man, the feeling of respect is very mutual. Not to mention, Heather, all the work you did, man, and getting me all that homework to do right when I started at Marvel. So thank you for that too.
I love giving people homework, so really the pleasure is mine.
She's pretty brutal at it too. She's unrelenting when it comes to giving me background work to do.
I have to say, Sev, I am sure Ryan said this to you when you guys spoke earlier, but you made this man's life by sneaking him into Ironheart.
Yep.
What are you guys talking about?
Well, in case you didn't know, now see, when I saw somebody who was watching the screeners before me messaged me and said, "Hey, I think you're in this," and I'm like, "Oh, that's cute, you prankster," because like Paul from Heavy Spoilers is the type who will do that kind of thing all the time. I assumed it was like a graphic designer who knew another Ryan Airy, because there's a few of us. We're not legion, but we're out there. We all Googled each other. We started a Facebook group. It lit up after this happened, that's for sure. I do want to get to that, but we're not here about me. We can be if you want, but we're not here about me. Sev, I want to talk about you, how you got to this point, your career, and most especially later on. I'm dying to talk about Ironheart because I just finished the 6th episode. What the hell? It's like one of the best cliffhangers since Twin Peaks. So I definitely want to get into that. I really, truly, I don't lie. I wouldn't even lie to your face right now. If I didn't like it, I would just think of nice things to say. I loved it, and I can't wait to talk more about it. So congrats on the show. Let's hear about you though. Like you have an interesting backstory. You were born in Germany, Army kid. Like what was your life like, and how did you get into the pictures business?
So my ethnic background is I'm Armenian, and my parents are also Armenian. They grew up in the country Iran. Just because our ancestors fled Armenia for various reasons related to the genocide of 1915, and my parents then fled Iran during the time of the Iranian Revolution and ended up in Germany as refugees. And that's where I was born while they were waiting to be granted their visa to come to America. But long story short, I'm an immigrant and I'm a child of immigrants. Came to America when I was only a few months old. Ended up growing up in LA in California. And from a very, very young age, I love storytelling. My mom really instilled in my sister and I a real passion for reading books. And my dad instilled a passion in us of watching movies. We would go to Blockbuster and rent as many VHSs as he would allow. And that from a very early age made me want to do something in storytelling. And through a long roundabout way, I found myself going to USC Film School. And that's where I met a lot of my collaborators, Ryan Coogler, who I have a company with called Proximity, Ryan,
Yeah.
myself, and Zinzi Coogler. Also my wife, Natalie Kasabian, she produced Searching with me, Missing, a bunch of movies. And then also I met my writing partner, Anish Chaganty, who I wrote Searching with and Run and Missing, and he's a phenomenal director himself. So the film school was kind of where I ended up and where I met these great folks. And after film school, got started in a very, very small indie space. My first movie was Ryan.
And real quick, just so I have a sense of a timeline here, when did you finish film school? I'm not asking you to date yourself, but
No,
date
totally. I
yourself.
mean, I can date myself all day. I'm 38 years old. I joke that I about 2 weeks ago I turned 38, and I would always joke that I was 37. But I graduated film school in 2012. That was graduate school, so it's been yikes, like 13 years, I guess. And right out of film school, I was really fortunate that Ryan Coogler called me. He had graduated the year before me, and he had just set up his first feature film, a very small indie film called Fruitvale
Yeah.
Station, and he wanted to have me come on and help produce that movie. And we made that movie on like no money. It was Ryan's first time on a movie set as a director, my first time on a movie set as a producer. Every day on that film, we were being faced with the fact that we probably did not really know what we were doing, but our passion, our desire to be innovative and find ways to do things that were not necessarily industry standard, I do think helped make that film the special movie that it was.
Yeah.
Movie went to Sundance, did really well, got into Cannes, had a great release. It certainly launched Ryan's career. And just to quickly catch up, after Fruitvale, Ryan went on to write and direct a movie called Creed, which is a really, really great movie, a spinoff of the Rocky franchise. He was fighting to have me come on and be a producer with him as his partner on that film. And for all the reasons that made sense, it didn't work out. But it was a great opportunity for me because that allowed me to go off and really kind of cut my teeth as a producer and make a ton of indie films. And I was very systematic about doing the faith-based movie, doing a Mandarin language movie. I really wanted an idea of how to do the job, all while I was really looking to find a project that I could be a lead producer on. Whereas those other films, I was kind of a junior, helping others out. I never was.
Including Fruitvale? Were you a junior producer on
Yeah,
Fruitvale? Or?
Fruitvale, I was a co-producer. I was not the lead producer by any
Okay.
means. Definitely, doing the job as much as I could. And I ended up realizing that because of where I was at, because of the indie space, I was never going to be submitted like a really, big writer script. I would have to find it. And when I ultimately couldn't find one that I just really wanted to make a tiny movie that I felt could have a big reach, I ended up writing a movie with my writing partner, Anish Chaganty. We wrote a film called Searching about a father looking for his missing daughter. It all takes place on computer screens, not unlike this. And my first time being a lead producer, I brought on my wife Natalie, at the time girlfriend, to produce it with me. We made that film for $800,000.
Incredible.
Went to Sundance. I got the producer award. I got the audience award. We won all these awards. Sold to Sony, and the movie made $75 million theatrically. So it was like this
I
awesome,
remember.
fantastic.
Yeah, I was gonna say I remember when it first, was hitting like the trailer circuit and everything like that. Like it was revolutionary what you guys did with telling a film solely via screens and like, webcams and phones and all of that stuff. And it extremely innovative. I'm always as a comic editor and creator myself, I'm always looking for ways to how can we, use the medium of comics and manipulate it to tell stories in a different way. And you guys really found something special with Searching. So I think that's really cool. I would love to ask because Ryan and I, we live, breathe TV shows, movies, all of this stuff. We know what the role of a producer is. But for folks back home who, producer is just kind of this title, right, that appears in the credits. Can you explain a little bit about what exactly it is your job as a producer?
Yeah, totally. It's funny how it's become so confusing.
Mhm.
It's there's a big movement happening right now, actually, by a lot of producers, a group called the Producers United, which is actually trying to undo some of that. Because, and not to get into too much history in this podcast, because I want to talk about all the fun stuff, is the title became something that studios would just offer as a bargaining chip. When you were, trying to make a deal with an actor, but you couldn't quite reach their financial code, you would be like, well, I'll just give you producer credit to sweeten the deal. So the title itself kind of became almost dewatered or watered down in a certain sense. I see producer as a creative partner to the director. And it'll always vary, that relationship, depending on who the director is, who the producer is. But think of it as the person who's the director's right hand. And that means supporting them in realizing their vision. I really subscribe to the notion that it's a collective vision on a lot of these films. I know a lot of the best filmmakers that I work with, Ryan Coogler, Anish, they all subscribe to that same idea. It's a collective vision with the director at the lead.
Which is interesting because, I mean, Coogler's an auteur, usually writes and directs and stuff too. That he views it as a collective like that.
Oh my God. I mean, Ryan is the most, I mean, he's the most brilliant filmmaker, I think, of our generation. And he also happens to be one of the most collaborative people on the planet. And that doesn't just mean him and his producers, it's him and everybody. And sometimes the job means challenging your director. I think I really see, a couple of analogies I often think about is, it's like you guys are going on a hike together. And the mountain could be treacherous or it could be easy depending on what the project is, but it's your job to keep each other on the path. And some filmmakers, or sometimes the relationship is you really got to, drag the person in the right direction. Sometimes you got to be dragged yourself, and sometimes you got to be careful not to fall off. It's that kind of collaboration. Another analogy I often use is the director's job is to have like a pair of binoculars glued to their eyes, because they are so responsible for every detail on a project, whether it's a prop or whether it's a beat in a performance. They just have to be so oriented on what is the beat that we're trying to tell to serve the story. The producer's job, I think, is to be right next to them so that we can be looking at it all. So when the filmmaker is really focused on X detail or Y detail, you can be there to remind them, well, don't forget, there's a scene and, we're going to shoot in 2 days that if we do that note, that's going to maybe counteract with that note. Or, hey, reminder, we always talked about this scene being about X, even though the improv is fantastic. We want to maybe get a take that gets that covered. So it's all about collaboration. Obviously, we also are responsible for the business of it all. Like, how do we pull this off? And there's specific producers called line producers who are so talented. Their job is the budget, hiring, firing, the managing, like that's kind of more their brand. But as a creative producer, we also have to oversee that, because sometimes you have to really be creative even when it comes to the logistics to pull something off. But we're there with the filmmaker from the very beginning up until the very end, through all of it, through editing, through post, usually as another voice to help, like I said, support, challenge, and just ultimately realize the vision of the film. I hope that helped clarify some of it.
It sounds very simple and stress-free and relaxing, and there's never any personality issues that you ever have to deal with, I'm sure.
Accurate.
Everything I know about producing, I learned from the great 1996 film called Wag the Dog, which I did see in theaters instead of Space Jam. So oddly enough, yeah, I can bring it full circle for you. But that movie was a great crash course.
I got to rewatch that film. That's it.
It holds up. Mike Nichols.
Oh yeah, I think I'm realizing for the first time ever that Argo is like a spiritual successor to that film, because that's another.
I think that's a great analogy. Yeah, I like that. And now Argo is also about producing.
Ryan and I even talk about his Inception is a good film that kind of shows filmmaking. Like if you think about every member of that heist crew is a member of a filmmaking team. There's a production designer who designs the space, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt I see as the producer who figures out how to realize the vision. But I'm going on a crazy tangent.
No, I love it.
No. I've actually read, I've seen somewhere, I've seen video, read something, maybe Matt Singer on our website wrote something along the same lines. A lot of Nolan's films can be interpreted as, a treatise on filmmaking. Same thing with Soderbergh. I mean, the Ocean's 11 films are people planning this operation and everybody having to be in place. And, we have the easy part. I get to sit and just watch it on the screen. Even with, we did a centers breakdown, and just watching all of those making of footage. You told me you snuck in there, right? We got a shot of you in the making of footage.
Bro, I like spit my coffee out. Maybe it's how you felt when you saw the Ryan area. I was like, oh shoot, I'm in a ScreenCrush video. Like, oh snap. So,
I thought it was a prank when I saw the Ryan area. I doubt if you did.
I'm gonna be honest with you now, Ryan. Like, that's not you.
Oh,
that's my friend from high school named Ryan. I'm totally kidding. It
All
is
right. So
absolutely
everybody, thanks for coming. We're done with this interview. Heather and I are going to talk about comics for the rest of the time.
no,
Well, you
no.
do a cool thing too. It's cool to hear that you watch the channel for Easter eggs and stuff like that, because you were saying earlier, you're such a big Easter egg guy. You have an entire kind of movie hidden inside of your other movies just through Easter eggs. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, man, I have so much to say about this. Like, just using Searching as an example. So that was that movie that I wrote about the father looking for his missing daughter. It takes place on a computer screen, and we really strive to make it both cinematic and emotional. Like, if you've seen the film, the opening 5 minutes often is compared to Pixar's Up
Mhm.
for all the right reasons, and we go on this crazy journey with the film, and it's a very grounded, tensed, suspenseful film about the worst few days of a father's life. But by the virtue of that movie being on a computer screen, we had to populate things around it. He might be watching a YouTube video, but what are the thumbnail suggested videos on the
Mhm.
right? Or he's looking at a Facebook comment. What about the posts above and below it, and so forth? It needed a lot of time from us to just populate all of that. And as we were doing it, I'm like, man, like, there's an opportunity here to like put a lot of fun Easter eggs and tell a really fun story on the side. And I thought about, and we made the movie for no money, but I thought about, what if over the course of the journey of this film, there's an alien invasion movie happening off to the
Mhm.
side. And if our viewers and audience members are,
What's the
clever
most
enough or like positive.
extreme? Yeah.
Exactly. So we go from this grounded, harrowing story about a father's love for his daughter to like essentially Independence Day. And part of it was a business mind for, because I'm like, oh, our movie is a small movie. We're gonna need all the reasons possible for people to want to see it or to want to buy it on VOD or to like rewatch it. And I was like, if we do this right, people will like write about it and there'll be videos about it. And it certainly was true. But for me, like, Easter eggs is because I didn't grow up with a ton of money, and I love video games. I
Mhm.
love, love, love video games as a kid. And I kind of had no choice but to play the same games over and over again.
Mhm.
I started to notice that there was little hidden details that weren't obvious the first time around. And in the video game industry is very famous for Easter eggs, similar to Searching, just by the virtue of it there being so much content that you have to like detail. And I realized that for me, like, Easter eggs are certainly not the priority when you're telling a story. Even Ironheart as an example, or Searching, the priority is the
Uh-huh.
characters, the theme, the plot. That's, of course, that has to be the 99% of what you're focused on. But I do see Easter eggs oddly as a form of respect, because it says, as the people who put these stories together, it says to the audience, like, I see you. I know that you're
Mhm.
invested in our story. I know you're trying to think deeper about it. It feels almost like a quiet dialogue between us, and it shows, especially the Easter eggs that are about details that kind of flesh out the world and show the continuity where you may not realize it's there. To me, it's a way of just kind of rewarding like
Mhm.
people who care about that stuff, because it just feels really nice when you watch a movie that feels like it all makes sense. It's all in the same world, and it's just a nice way for us to tell the audience we see you. And what's so amazing about what you guys do, Ryan, you guys and all the guys at New Rock Stars and Heavy Spoilers, like you guys take what we do and you share your love of it for another audience who will then be able to further see what we do. Critics serve an important purpose because they analyze the story, and people who do their reactions to our projects, so important. But what you guys do is so specific, and it's so thoughtful, and it's challenging because I watch what you guys do, and oftentimes you guys are citing like crazy amounts of like literature, and you're going back and you're showing you've done the work. I mean, the stuff you
Yeah.
guys did with Agatha, oh my God, I was like,
And I take no credit for that, because not only did I not write those scripts, but we had at the time an intern slash freelancer, who happens to know a lot about tarot and
Mhm.
Wicca. So with that was thank you, by the way, for that. But staff member's name was Elias, and then Brianna McClarty wrote those videos. She also wrote our House the Dragon videos last year. But I mean, I'm in there. I'm doing some stuff. But like, if somebody's been assigned to write a script, and if I've trained them up like that, I let them go. I don't like to like influence what they do. I'm pretty careful with Doug. Like, I'm usually, if I'm editing something, it's Doug's lines, because he doesn't like to have too many lines. That's
He's
usually
like
where the
Keanu
influence comes.
Reeves
But
and John Wick, right? You're paid per word. That Doug is paid per
yeah,
word.
less is
Yeah.
more. Yeah, less is more as far as he's concerned. Uh, but again, thank you, I guess, for all that about the Easter eggs and stuff. And we definitely want to get to Ironheart and Easter eggs in there. But there's a question I like to ask people who work in movies, because you wouldn't be doing this if you, like, when you start to have like a movie geek conversation, it always goes back to like, well, what was your movie? So do you have a movie that you think made you want to make movies? or what was your huge influence on like,
Space
yes,
Jam.
that's
I
want to
think
make
Space
that.
Jam, the first Space Jam.
It was 1000%
Space
Space.
what? Okay.
Ryan, you got to go watch Space Jam, man. Both of them, man. Those are important movies. But I will say, for me, it's honestly Back to the Future,
Nice.
which like coincident.
Good answer.
Another fantastic movie when you talk about details. Like,
Oh,
their classic example is at the beginning of the
the whole trilogy.
Yeah.
the whole
Yeah.
trilogy, but like just the easiest example is like where they kick off the time travel is at, I think it's Twin Pines
Mhm.
Mall, and the first
Mhm.
thing Marty does when he goes back in time
It's
is he
one pine.
runs over
Yep.
one of the trees. When he comes
Yeah.
back at the end, it's called
Yep.
Lone Pines Mall, and there's no close-up shot, there's no musical cue, it's just there. And you could watch the movie 20 times and never realize it, but if you catch that one time, you just, again, you get that sense of respect. So that movie's so freaking great, man. Like, it's what I really like, movies that deal with crazy complex themes, but like in a very simple way, that it's really a story about a guy who's trying to get his parents to love each other, but obviously deals with the space-time continuum and all the fun stuff. Like that movie is such a rich film to watch and watch again. I remember it was one of those things where I think we rented it so many times, we had far exceeded the cost of how my parents just bought it, but that's the 90s.
Is that even back when VHS tapes would cost like $90?
Oh, yeah.
Because they used to, so people wouldn't, just buy them for the video store and stuff.
Yeah,
That
definitely.
movie too, that was a huge one on me. I remember when I finally because I didn't get to see part 2 in the theaters, so I would call my video store about every 10 minutes. Did anybody return it yet? Did anybody return it yet? And they would hold it for me behind the counter. And one of the happiest days of my life is when I was able to get 1, 2, and 3 and watch them in one sitting. It changes
Yeah.
the way you notice
Yeah.
stuff. Like Doc Brown, his bandana is his Hawaiian shirt from part 2. Stuff like
I'm
that.
sorry,
But
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
no.
what?
Yeah, if you look closely, the bandana, when he robs them, right? Yeah. I mean, the only thing about those movies I always think about in terms of like, oh, it could have been just this little much better, right? Is Crispin Glover obviously wasn't offered enough money, so he turned down part 2, and then the unfortunate thing with them stealing his likeness and him winning in court. But Michael J. Fox wasn't supposed to be the Seamus McFly. It was supposed to be Crispin Glover, which would have been a perfect, bringing the whole franchise 360, where his dad, in a meta way, I guess, would have grown up and then finally taught his son a lesson. But instead, it's Michael J. Fox
That's so,
doing that accent, back then.
that's so
But
true, man.
no, it's a perfect
When you
trilogy.
rewatch him, I do feel like, because they shot 2 and 3 together, there's a great continuity with those, but like
Yeah.
they clearly introduced the character arc of him not wanting to be called
Chicken.
Chicken. And like that
Yeah.
kind of comes out of nowhere, but you give him a shout out you give him enough of a leeway for that. I mean, those
And that movie, it's so much fun with fan theories. Like, wait, did she name her kid? Like, okay, wait, this kid looks exactly like the kid they knew in high school, and she insists on giving him the same name. Does George think that's his love child? Her love child is Marty. Like, it gets deep. Or the Chuck
I
Berry,
know, man. It's
time loop, the Terminator loop.
I don't know if we should even put any energy towards it, but like that hand motion that the kid does in the 3rd movie, like what?
Oh yeah, the weird
What
thing.
is
Kids are just strange, though. I mean, that's where. Heather, have you seen Back to the Future 2
Oh,
and
I
3? Or is
love.
that your Space
No,
Jam?
no. I love 3. I think I'm the one person in the world that like absolutely loves 3.
I love 3. Who doesn't
Yeah,
love
it's
3?
great. The climax
It
of
is
3
so
is
good.
phenomenal.
No,
That
no,
Yeah, it's more character based
it
than
is.
1.
It is.
Well, 1 is about George. It might as well be called like Saving Mr. Banks. It's Saving Mr. McFly.
I will say though, I didn't love Back to the Future as much as my friend in college's parents, who loved Back to the Future so much that they named their kid DeLorean. So,
Oh, that is. They named the boy or girl.
boy, yeah.
Boy, they named the guy
Yeah.
DeLorean after a car that is notorious for
Yeah,
not working.
But I'll never forget. It was like my first week of college, in an acting class, and I meet this kid, and my name is DeLorean, and I was the only person in the room that was like Back to the Future, like the car.
I knew a kid in college named Bobby Nintendo, and he was also the son of immigrants. And they gave him that name because they wanted him to have an American sounding name. So they named
Bobby
the child Bobby Nintendo.
Amazing.
And I'm shocked he's not a rock star. I thought minimum this guy's going to be a rock star just based on the name.
Well, that's actually a pretty valid name.
It is.
It's
I'm going to have
awesome.
to write that character into a book someday. Based not on the real Bobby, but like on, just to have that. And I'm going to rewind real quick, Sev, because we glossed over a lot of your early stuff. I want to just ask a couple things here about Fruitvale Station, right? You mentioned you felt like you were, oh my God, it's my first time doing this, filling in over your head. I'm right now, you're a great producer. Like you look at the stuff you're putting out now, probably hitting your imperial period. But I love when people are starting out and they make mistakes. So looking back at Fruitvale, what are some lessons you learned as a first-time producer that maybe you don't wish you could go back, but were very instructive for you?
Man, that's such a great question, and
Thank you.
I hope this is a good answer. But there's a lesson that I learned on Fruitvale that I then learned again on Space Jam. I then learned again on Ironheart. That I learned again on Sinners. It's kind of the same lesson, which is kind of related to this idea of imposter syndrome.
Oh,
And where, like, when we were working on Fruitvale, I had a lot of student films underneath my belt. I had made my own kind of like Armenian feature film, like on no money that I made with, like kind of in my community.
was that a big fat Armenian wedding?
Yeah, exactly. My big family and
Yeah, yeah.
family. That basically the quick background for that is I had made these short films making fun of my Armenian parents out of love. Like today, they would have been TikTok videos that you often see, like fun sketches,
Yeah.
and they'd blown up so big in my community that I ended up shooting a whole movie that I wrote, I directed, I produced, I shot, I edited on my dad's
That's awesome.
video camera, and then my makeup artist quit, so then I did that too, and the makeup was awful. But it was like a really kind of fun road trip movie about like old school Armenian parents and like their Americanized kids and the culture clash. But that was like a micro budget movie, like on my dad's camera, like I said, Fruitvale being my first indie film and my first real movie. And then, later Space Jam being first studio movie, and Sinners being the first movie that it's our own movie, and then Ironheart being first, big TV series. Like every time these first happen, I imagine this is a very universal thing, but I would find myself questioning everything
Mhm.
about myself. Like, well, I don't, this is apparently you're supposed to do it that way. I wouldn't know, so I got to trust that process. But I think what I learned over and over again is a validation that like your instincts, if you've done the work, if you've taken the time to study and read and be thoughtful and showing up, having prepared, that's valuable. And it applies whether it's your first movie period, your first studio movie, your first whatever. Basically, like learning to believe in your own instincts. And I don't mean to sound like a Hallmark card, but it genuinely is true. It is kind of repeats. It has been true over and over again, and it goes back to being intentional and thoughtful about it. But even Fruitvale Station, it was a very very low budget film, but clearly one that was important to us. We were dealing with a very true real life story about a tragic murder essentially that had happened,
Mhm.
and we were working very closely with Oscar's family. And I know Ryan to this day remained very close with them. We then later made a film
Mm.
called Judas and
Yeah.
the Black Messiah, which is
Mhm.
similar in that it deals with the tragic historical event that we had to reckon with the film, and we were able to on that movie really insist upon having Chairman Fred Hampton Jr., the son of Daniel Kaluuya's character from that film, be very much present with us on set as part of the project, and being careful to do right by the real story, but also still make an entertaining film that has to, serve its own function. So it just goes back to just, I hate to like boil it down to something as cheesy as believe in yourself, but I can't stress enough that really, really matters. And that applies to anybody. If you're doing a short, whatever you're doing, like you have to have a real confidence in yourself, assuming you've done the work and taken the time to be, as prepared as you can be.
I would love to know you have a very vast resume that kind of bounces all around the place in terms of genre and scope, whether it's everything taking place on a screen as we see in Searching, whether it's aliens playing basketball in Space Jam, or period historic supernatural period pieces such as Sinners, to an MCU TV show. But you've said that grounded storytelling is a focus of yours. I would imagine it'd be very easy for any single one of those films, any single one of those formats, the TV shows, to become ungrounded very, very quickly, to let the genre take over, to let the supernaturalness take over, the aliens, whatever. How do you find the best way to keep your stories grounded in these, super surreal stories?
Yeah, man. Thank you for saying that, Heather. And look, in a lot of those films, I was not
Mhm.
the screenwriter. I was just a producer, and ultimately, every script is going to have, what it needs to work the best it could. I think Space Jam is probably not as grounded as those other films, but that's by design, just the very nature of it being LeBron, plus Bugs Bunny on a screen.
Space what?
It's called Space Jam. It's a cinematic masterpiece.
It stars Bugs Bunny.
Okay.
Heard of him?
I don't know any Bunny. I'm sorry. I'm out of this part of the conversation.
But like basically like you got to find the core root of the story. Like it has to like land on something relatable and real. And I think Space Jam, our intention was to tell a story about Black fatherhood. And if you know anything about LeBron James, who's an amazing person, by the way, like both career-wise, professionally, successfully, and even in real life, like he's just such a good dude.
And a massive X-Men fan.
And a massive X-Men fan. I don't think I knew
He
that
actually
about
is, yeah.
That's
But he was
cool.
good.
Let the fan casting go. He's also a good actor, by the way. But he, rooting the story on around the idea of fatherhood was so important. If you know anything about LeBron's personal story, but he's also just a great dad. Finding what is it about fatherhood that can somehow thematically connect to the idea of Looney Tunes, and obviously sometimes you're more successful than others. And Space Jam was such an enormous, movie to try and tackle. But the idea was like maybe there's something there about the feeling a son can have about their father. Is there some connection there to what Looney Tunes can feel like of existing in the 2020s, with how much time has passed? So that's always the idea. Like, what can you root it on? Like Sinners is about so many things, and it's a movie that's on the surface, like, as you said, like vampires and musicals and 1930s gangsters. But, it's a movie that deals with the concept of freedom. Like, what does it mean to be free? And what does that look like? And how are ways that concept can be perverted and subverted and just violated it when it comes to some of the characters and what they go through. Like, can we root it in that concept, and how does every scene relate to that concept, and how does every scene further the idea of that concept, so you're not just repeating the same notion but rather growing it and evolving it and so forth. That's always the goal for me.
I love it.
Well, especially I'm glad you brought up Sinners because I was late to the party on Sinners. I wasn't able to see it in IMAX because I was on tour. So there were a lot of movies and things I missed out on. But as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, I missed out the ending explained. But we were so excited to put together the breakdown. And I have this thing where if I have access to the movie, like when it was on digital, and if I have that chance to make a breakdown, we're going to go in. Like, we're not going to half-ass it. And that's why our breakdown was 50 minutes long, and it could have been 3 times longer. Because, I mean, talk about Easter eggs. The insane amount of detail that you and the entire team, I mean, especially when you go into those making ofs, you could just do an hour on the costume department. You could do an hour on the set dressers. Like, everything in that was so curated perfectly. And not to mention the technical achievement, but just an incredible achievement for you guys. And I know that, people may not know your face now, but I have a strong feeling they're going to know it next year when you guys are up on that stage at many, many awards. I don't want to jinx anything, but that movie was such an achievement. I was blown away by it. And it was so much fun to make our breakdown video for that.
Man, thank you guys for doing that, man. Because look, it's an original movie. It's an R-rated film about the 1930s, primarily Black cast. Like, those are not the kind of films that you typically see that kind of breakdown done. But when I saw it, I mean, it was like Christmas for me. I was like, oh my God, they just covered our film. Like screw my responsibility. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for doing that. And you guys caught so many great things, and you guys got so much right. And then every now and then you guys get a couple things wrong, but that's okay.
Sure.
It's okay.
Like name pronunciations. I'm usually the worst person for that because I'll see them in a script and roll past it and go, I'll fix it later.
I will not lie. Sometimes on your videos, like, you guys will say things about my movies, and I'm like, we never intended that, but you know what? Now we did.
Now I will take that. And
That's part of the dialogue of it. Like, for a I don't want to go too deep into Star Wars, but the reason Star Wars fans tend to be so defensive is because it's so personal to us. And I think fans feel the same way about the MCU. And I think there's a whole generation of cinema fans who are going to feel that way about Sinners. Like you said, it's not the kind of movie, you would have normally said, oh, this is going to be a blockbuster on big IMAX screens, but it just hits on so many levels. What was the process for that film? How did it come together?
Yeah, it's interesting, man, because Ryan is such a prolific, such a successful filmmaker. I mean, just at his young age, the 2 Panther movies making, I think, like $2 billion or something. It's just unheard of. It's like staggering, the success, not to mention the cultural impact his films have had and just how good they are. We have our company, Proximity Media, that we were lucky to partner with Marvel on Ironheart and our upcoming Eyes of Wakanda show. We have so much other stuff going on. We got a docuseries dropping in July.
What
and
about?
all these things about Hurricane Katrina, like looking at it 20 years after the
Oh,
fact.
wow.
You know,
Yeah, that's right. It's been
it's really
20. Wow.
powerful. We were all at a dinner at October 2023. It was around the time of Halloween, just kind of talking about the future and divvying up who's going to be working on what from our company. Ryan had pitched me the idea of Sinners well before then, almost as an idea of a movie that hopefully he'll one day make, but not knowing when and where or how or if ever. At this Halloween dinner in October, he's like, yo, what if I work on Sinners? What if I write the script and I get it to you guys December, and then we go and take it to the studio in January, and then we start shooting in April? And I'm like, okay, so it's October now. If he gets me the script in December, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. I started counting the number of months to the following December. You know, that's about 14 months to write a script. And I'm like, that's a tight timeline, because Ryan is a fantastic screenwriter, maybe the best ever. But it takes a long time to write a good movie. It really does. Like 2 months is insanely unheard of. And he's a busy man. He's an amazing husband, father. I'm like, okay, you think you can get a script in my next December? And he was like, no, I'm saying this December. And my mind was like, wait, what? Is this even remotely possible? So we like, he's like, I'm gonna go off and write it. We're like, great. We started casting the movie with no script. We started looking for music with no script. We started looking for ways to pull off the VFX, because the twin effect had to be so perfect.
And it
then,
was.
man, shout out to Michael Ralla, our VFX supervisor, James Alexander, VFX producer, and all the vendors we work with. I mean, and of course to Michael, who he brought those two characters to life. And special shout out to Percy Bell, the body double we had to cast for Michael, who not only had to look like Michael's general build, he also had to be a good actor, because he's the guy that Michael's acting opposite from. But just to go back, like Ryan turned in the draft in December, and it was a knockout draft. And a part of me feels like the way he was able to make the movie, to write the movie so well, is because that story's been inside of him for as long as it was. It's about his family. It's about his ancestry. I think that movie was like, almost like, if you've seen Sinners, it felt like the ancestors were writing through him in so many ways. And of course we did a couple of passes and all that, but we got the movie going so astonishingly quickly. Truly, there's a saying where, like, we were, the train was on the tracks while we were still building the tracks. In our case, we were truly building the train, because we needed our partner Ludwig, our composer, and Serena, our executive music producer, to have like 20 songs written, a lot of which were brand new original songs, before we even shot a frame. I mean, it was generally the final exam of producing for me. Like, it was the boss battle of this thing. And it was, I think the only reason we were able to pull it off was truly the last 10 years of everything Ryan and I had done together with Zinzi, with all of our partners, and putting that film together. Speaking of heist films and Christopher Nolan and Soderbergh, like, it was very much a heist. Like, Zinzi calling Ruth Carter, our costume designer, can you do this movie immediately? Can you, and getting Hannah Beek, our amazing production designer. It was like everyone had to get on board. And the way filmmaking usually works is you spend a lot of time developing things and trying out a couple of options for the design of the build of the juke or whatever it is. We did not have time for options. So it was like everyone had to nail it on the first try.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that they did.
Wow.
I'm so proud of that movie, guys. And thank you for watching it and all the kind words. And again, for covering it.
I was gonna say, that's so impressive, because, those aren't small sets. Like, you literally have a town, that you guys have, and they're not small scenes. There's a couple scenes here and there where it's 1 or 2 actors, but it's mostly a like, almost like a stage play, right? You almost have the entire cast throughout the whole film. So to do that quickly is truly a feat.
Man, thank you guys. You guys want to hear a fun Marvel Easter egg? Shout out to Marvel Studios. Ruth Carter was working on the Blade movie that ended up not shooting, which I think they're still going to make.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the schedules of that, but at one point that movie was going to deal with, and she's talked about this before, but at one point that film was going to deal with the past around the same era as what.
That's cool.
Oh, no way.
She happened to have a warehouse full of period appropriate clothes, and it was like, yo, we got to shoot this movie like tomorrow. And Marvel was generous enough and kind enough to let us basically purchase it at price.
Oh,
And a lot of the
wow.
background actors in our movie
Oh my gosh.
are wearing those clothes. So special shout out to Marvel for making that happen.
Especially if actors were Mahershala Ali's size.
I think it was all about the background actors, but yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe one of the characters is wearing what they would have worn. I'm not sure.
So you heard it here first. Sinners is an MCU story. I think that's what I've.
Yeah, I'm like everybody else, I'm looking forward to the launch of the Center Cinematic Universe. You know, we've got what, 40, no, 70 years to fill between those
Yeah.
the end credits, and there's so many things you can do. We're gonna pitch you right now. But no, speaking of cinematic universes, I've waited long enough. I want to talk about Ironheart. This show, it surprised me because it was shot
Mhm.
so long ago, it seemed like, and then sat on the shelf for a long time, which maybe was Marvel wanting to parse out their releases so they weren't on top of other things. But it shows because the visual effects look amazing. The actors are incredible. And a friend of a friend interviewed some of the cast members for different things a couple years ago. And she told me, like, no, this cast is excited about this show. And when the cameras aren't rolling, they don't pretend to be excited about things, you know what I mean? But they were, according to my friend, like incredibly excited. So that's always made me optimistic about it. I mean, I cannot believe how much I love this show. The way, you know, Dominique Thorne anchored it, she had a true character journey that in a lot of ways was the opposite of
Mhm.
Tony Stark. You know, there's a lot of cool allusions in there about Tony Stark had to get in the armor to feel safe. She has to leave the armor to feel safe. But in ways that didn't just feel Easter eggy, it felt like, yes, this is her character. She is separate from him, even though they have similar tracks and personalities. So congrats on it. I mean, I am dying to hear how that show came together and then just nerd out about it for a while.
Yeah, look, I can't talk about the show without mentioning our head writer, Chinaka Hodge, who
Absolutely.
this was her first time essentially running a show, running the writing room. She's an old friend of mine and Ryan's also. She went to USC. But she really had to compete to
Mhm.
get the job. We had a lot of people pitching ideas and stuff. And one thing that Chinaka nailed so beautifully is Riri's voice. She's still the same character from Wakanda Forever, but now that we're home with her, we spend more time with her. Like really get a sense of who she is and how she operates. We shot it a couple years ago, but the delay is really just twofold. One, it's the writer and actor strike really pulled a number on this one. Like
Mhm.
just like with any of them,
Hmm.
you have to just go down for so long. It's so funny. I've seen so many kind of comments about how great the VFX look in our show. And again, that's shout out to Greg Steele, our VFX supervisor, and Dave Bosco, our VFX producer. They have not been working on the show for years to get it to look this good. They have the same
You're
amount of time.
kidding me. I just
Yeah.
assumed. I really did because you hear all these horror stories about visual effects artists being forced into deadlines. I thought, oh, good, they gave them time. It looks great. It
Mhm.
looks feature film. It looks fantastic. And
It,
I
it,
don't lie
I,
about my
I
thoughts
believe
on
you.
stuff.
I believe you that you haven't seen Space Jam. Basically, they really at the end of the day, yes, there was more time, but it's not like that time because
Mhm.
time is money, and that would have I don't know if the show didn't need that time to look this good or to change. I mean, people don't realize this, but we only shot 2 days of reshoots, which is an extremely
Wow.
tiny amount.
Wow.
You often hear stories, and this is not just a Marvel thing. You'll hear stories about weeks or whatever. This
Oh,
it was
absolutely.
is entirely the strikes and a little bit, I think, of just Disney overall parsing out all their content. I mean, obviously they have the Star Wars universe and they have all the I mean, there's so many other projects. It was just probably was some decision about when things should go out. So it really was. It was interesting to see the speculation about all the things, and I really love seeing the response from fans and regular people being like, "Yo, this is pretty good," and like this goes into some interesting directions, and but it's that's just the internet. It is what it is.
One of the things I love so much about Ironheart is it is even though, we are, gosh, almost 20 years into the MCU, right? It's still I think I aged Ryan saying that. But
Yeah, you
it's true.
did.
We're almost 20 years into the MCU. This show feels fresh. It feels new. You really developed Chicago as its own place in the MCU.
Hmm.
It doesn't feel like a rehash of, the stuff we've seen before. The Hood and his crew all feel like unique voices and characters. Riri and her family, her relationship with Natalie, like everything. What is it like getting to develop a brand new corner of such an established cinematic universe? What's that process like?
And it's a great observation because so often when you're working on a show like this and pitching ideas and trying to brainstorm and blue sky, like, what if we did this? What if we that? Or, oh man, because I just to even back it up, Zoe Nagelhout is our executive producer from Marvel and essentially lead executive producer on the show, and Kelsey Liu was a supervising producer. They're both Marvel legends in my book. You know, Zoe's been there as I think she was the front desk employee at one point, and ended
Very
up being an
cool.
Oh, wow.
assistant working on this. She was the junior exec on Black Panther 1. Kelsey started off, I believe, as the assistant to the filmmakers on Captain Marvel. And they were like they were the ones who started this idea. They were the ones who had the crazy idea to make it about tech versus magic, to bring in Parker Robbins. And at Proximity, we were so lucky to be able to work with them side by side. And you know, Brad Winderbaum is the genius who oversees all the streaming, and of course Kevin and Lou and at the time Victoria, who oversee it all. But being somewhat removed from the rest of Marvel, because you know Ryan, Zinzi, and I were not Marvel employees in the traditional sense. I would pitch some cool stuff. I remember, this is such a silly like thing. It doesn't even apply to that and finished show. But at one point we were like something flying fortress. Okay, like, and then they're like, ooh, like Black Widow's gonna have something like that. And we're like, oh, okay, can't do that. Like
Yeah.
something, you know, X or whatever. They're like, Thunderbolts is gonna have a character who does that. So it was like, man, like usually when you're developing, you kind of have a blank slate. But with Marvel, you have to not only be careful about what has come before and what is yet to come, but what's fun is like there's
Mhm.
ways to remix things.
Are there anything, speaking of ideas that you tried to pitch, anything that, I don't know, not a deleted scene, but deleted concepts that didn't quite work that you guys were playing with that you kind of met? Oh, that would have been cool.
Man, that's a good question. I'm trying to think.
Or maybe characters you toyed around with putting in, but who
eh,
either
I,
were going to be somewhere else or just didn't fit.
I could tell you this, like at the earliest days when we were talking about a particular character that shows up at the very end, there was a lot of fun ideations of like, what could that character do? You know, where do we see that character? In what context do we see that character? So we fleshed out many versions until we landed on where we landed, which we're all very happy with. But
Mhm.
that's just the process. You know, we got Shanaka again running this room. We got an incredible
Mhm.
staple of really talented writers. And you know, and what would be really fun is that this is during the time of COVID, where very often we have a Zoom meeting with Kevin and Lou and Victoria and Brad. And you know, like they're so smart, man. Those guys who see it all, like they're so specific, they're so detail oriented, and they always have these amazing ideas. I think one thing I learned, you know, very much from Kevin and Brad in particular, is that they really are great at like pitching things that are just not expected. You know, like oftentimes you think you know where a story's going to go, so you kind of naturally will arc it in the way that it wants to
Mhm.
go, and they would be like, do something different. And I think you see that in the amazing movies that they made, like just Captain America: Winter Soldier, like the fact that, well, we learn what happens with Shield and what it is. Like, what? Like, did not see that coming. You know, in so many of their films and so many of even their other series, like they're just, when they're so good, it's usually because they take you in an unexpected direction. And I think that was very much the idea with Riri's journey in the show and some of the places, you know, she goes. Like, I really love the end of 103. You know, I feel like the show opens up in a very unexpected way, and what happens between her and cousin John, like you
Yep.
just don't see that coming.
Mhm.
And the, you know, where you imagine things are gonna go with Zeke now, like all of that was by design. And you know, the end of 106 is just such a crazy, cool, like unexpected situation where you often see heroes who are faced with temptations and they always do the right thing. And this is an interesting example where she's kind of going a bit more of an anti-hero path, and what are the ramifications going to be. It all goes back to that notion of, you know, telling stories that will surprise you, because we've all seen so many at this point. Not only Marvel, but audiences have become so savvy over the years.
Speaking of unexpected, never in a million years did I expect to hear so many Star Trek references in a Marvel show. So I edit all the Star Trek comics. That's my current day job. So it was a nice, as someone who used to work for Marvel and is now on Star Trek, it was like a weird like Venn diagram coming together of all of my worlds with Riri Williams, the last character I ever expected to be such a Star Trek nerd, but it
But it
does make
makes
sense in a
sense.
way.
It makes
It
so
makes
much
so
sense.
much sense. Yes.
Yeah, and there's so many Star Wars references in the MCU, and I was like, "No, she
Everywhere
would be a
else.
Trekker," you know?
Yeah.
Yes, she loves Scotty. Scotty is her, I have to imagine she loves Scotty. That is her favorite Star Trek character.
I don't think she ever exaggerates by a factor of
I
4,
know.
but she really
I
should
know.
have at some point in the series when she was working with the gang. I truly love that too, and the card that she sent, Xavier, when he quoted it, of course, I knew exactly what it was from, and that it really It really got me. That scene always gets me.
Our 90% of our audience gonna understand the meaning of this card, but it works, you know, you get it, and I mean, what I loved is, it just makes
Mhm.
sense. She's more of a Trekkie than a Star Wars person. It just tracks. You can't explain it. And I think Kevin's a big Trekkie, or
Yeah,
somebody on our producing
he
team
is,
was a
yeah.
Trekkie previously. I think that kind of informs some of it too.
And it's one of the reasons I'm friendly with Terry Matalas, and he told me, that somebody at Disney or Marvel told him, "Hey, Kevin's really excited about Picard season 3." And he was like, at the time, he what? It's that kind, and now he's
Yeah.
doing a Marvel, so hopefully that helped him to get that gig. And big spoiler warning. Okay, so let's talk about Mephisto.
Wait, who?
Right? We can
What?
say the word.
What?
Mephisto,
What?
finally.
What?
I'm curious about something here, right? Before we even get into like my name popping up in the show.
Ryan Airy is Mephisto.
I am canon as Mephisto. When we were doing WandaVision coverage, right? And we had that show's so great at theories, and some channels took it more seriously than others. I was like, I guess, yeah, it could be Mephisto. And like, because sure, he's a character in the comics, but fans really grabbed onto Mephisto, right? It seemed like that was everybody's favorite thing. Did his inclusion in this series, was that because the fans were looking at it, or it just felt like a natural way for the series theme of temptation to go to? What was the decision behind there?
I don't think the fan reaction led to Mephisto being in the show. I think it didn't hurt, for sure, but it's a story about Riri's pursuit of power. It's a story ultimately about ambition, and we see how she goes down that path, and we see how Parker goes down that path. Parker in the comics, traditionally or historically
Mhm.
is tied to Dormammu. And,
Mhm.
early days, that was always a consideration too. Like, how do we bring Dormammu into this? But it felt that almost feels more random than Mephisto. And naturally, he's such a perfect fit for the season. Sorry, for the show. If you just listen to how many times we talk about the word soul, how many times there's notions about transactions, people shaking hands, talking about deals, obviously
Mhm.
contracts. It just naturally lent itself to a character who would be focused on that. And what I also just loved about it, going back to the unexpected thing, had there never been any leaks of any sort, which obviously we don't live in that world, I mean, just imagine how much your mind would be absolutely blown when that dude shows up and you realize who he is. It's just so fun, like Ironheart, why is there even magic and why is there this man? Like, it just makes for such a fun experience, man. Again, what I think Marvel does so well, because not only is it a surprise for surprise sake, it really does thematically fit the tone of what the show's going for.
I have to also call out another character from the comics that I mean, seeing Mephisto is great, but I was so thrilled that you guys put Zelma Stanton in their show. Zelma is one of
Yeah.
my favorite characters from the Doctor Strange run. And when I realized that the show was becoming, tech versus magic, and we see the outside of the Stanton shop, I freaked out.
Mm.
I might be like one of like 7 people in the world, but like I freaked out so much. I
Oh,
love her
man.
so much. Such a great addition.
The actress who plays Regan, she is literally
Yeah.
like off the comic books. She's like, I feel like I'm walking talk like to the actual character, and it's we talked about it often. Like, Shuri almost represents Riri's like counterpart in tech, right? They both represent
Mhm.
tech in all ways, and it's like
Yeah.
that's what she is. It's like Zelma is basically her if she was a magic person, and the way they play off of each other, it's so fun. And I mean, we have a little Easter egg about the
Yep.
maggots if you caught that in 104, which is what how we met her in the comics. It's awesome, man. It's so fun because, like I said, when I first started on Ironheart, the very first homework assignment
Yep.
was a stack of comics a mile high, which I believe, Heather, you had a lot to do with, and just reading about obviously all the Ironheart issues and all the Parker stuff and all the Big M stuff and her stuff in Doctor Strange. So I really hope we
Yes.
did right by those characters. I'm glad you hear you say that. I hope other fans feel the same way.
I like the nod to
Mhm.
the Bronx at the end, because
Yep.
she's got a Bronx hat
Yep.
on, and at first I was like, "Why is she's"
Yeah.
oh, that's why, because she's from the Bronx in the comics. It was very cool. I like a subtle Easter egg like that. And also, like, hopefully there's a Strange Academy show. I know if you know anything, don't say anything. I'm not asking you if there's a Strange Academy show, but there are rumors that I know you can't confirm or deny, but it'd be really cool to see her return for that if they're true. I do want to say this about magic in the MCU. I love that this
Mhm.
show demystified it again, because all of the MCU movies, to make sure they fit with Iron Man, kind of made magic a different type of science. I think there's even
Yep.
that line in Thor, magic is science you don't understand yet. what Mephisto does, and there's references to another realm, another dimension, could be tied to the multiverse, but what he does is freaking magic. Like, he's freezing time and doing this and influencing reality. He's a reality shaper. And I don't think that Riri could understand what he does with science. And I love that. I love that there's this element of we don't know how he does it. You just have to go with it because he's the devil. It's fantastic that you guys did that.
Yeah, I mean, I
Were there
will say
discussions on how to make the magic fit within the universe?
there's a great scene in 103 that Riri talks to Parker about like, well, what is the hood, and he, is it Pimtech, is it vibranium, and he goes like, it's magic, and she's like, magic, but that's just code for I don't know, and that's kind of like a subtle
Mhm.
reference to the Thor line, right? Where like what you call magic,
Right.
people called science. I know we flirted with ideas of like magic is unknowable and you can't understand it. It's not something you could break apart, as Riri talks about doing the show. Um, I don't want to speak too much about like what our intentions are and what it means, but I agree. I think like what happens in the show is it's at least from our human perception just feels so far outside of any realm of science. Um, it's exciting for sure. I mean, even think about Natalie, like as magic, she's actually not. She's clearly a piece of tech from the brain mapping, but something almost magical happened when Natalie came together because of what we was thinking about. So we just kept finding places that magic and tech would bleed together. And one of my favorite lines in the show, and oh my god, guys, it played so beautifully when we screened the movie at our launch event last week, which was in 102 when Ronnie, Riri's mother, tells Riri, I met Natalie, she's beautiful, like, baby, what is
Yeah.
this? Amazing. And she says, could you make one of Gary
Mm.
too? Like at
Yeah.
our premiere event, there was a couple hundred people. Like everyone was like, ah, like
It
it,
hit
it
me.
it's like that's what Chinaka and our amazing writers are always trying to touch on. Like there's like this weird bleeding edge between magic and tech, and where it's almost unexplainable because you don't know what it is. But yeah, that's so kind of you guys to say all that about what the show's going for on the magic side.
What are you guys is there gonna be a season 2, I guess? Like, you end on this cliffhanger that I said earlier reminded me of Coop at the end of Twin Peaks, bashing his head in the mirror and turning around. I was floored by that because these shows are normally made self-contained. You get 6 episodes and you're good and you're set up for the next movie. Are there any plans for anything forward going forward with her?
Like I can't confirm or deny anything about actual plans, but I will say what's incredible and unique about the MCU, like truly unique. I guess maybe except for Star Wars, which is now doing the series to movie jump, but those
Mhm.
characters can get picked up anywhere. It could be a season 2, it could be a different show
Mhm.
altogether, it could be a movie. I mean, WandaVision leading to Doctor Strange 2. I think these events, I have a feeling, that we will probably see these characters and these events carry on somehow and somewhere in some shape or form. That's all I can say.
Ah, man, you're a better liar than Andrew Garfield. I can see it all over your face. There's something in there.
So, Sev, can you tell us who Ryan Airy in the MCU is? What is his backstory? Is he a superhero?
Well, all right. So, yes, Heather, let's ask this question. In episode 2, Riri's looking at a list of people in the Chicago area
Mhm.
who have black market arms. Most of the people on the list are Marvel crew members. The owner of the Dodgers popped up in there intentionally or unintentionally, and my name is in there. And I know you said earlier that it wasn't actually me; it was another Ryan Airy, but I don't believe you. Whose decision was that to put me in? How did that happen?
So it was honestly just for fun. I like I said, I ever since WandaVision, I've watched your guys' breakdowns. And by the way, you guys are great, but like so are new Rockstar. I mean, I love everybody.
Absolutely.
I love Jessica. I mean, Jessica's breakdown of Iron Man. Sorry, Jessica's breakdown of
Sinners.
Ironheart 1 through 3 and Sinners, like
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
good. She's incredible. They're all like, and your boy Paul, like everyone's so good. But I've always just like watching you. Like I just it's always just so fun for me to just like click, and every time I watch something, like get to see what you have to say about it and what your team, what you guys all do, writing it and putting those shows together. I'm like, man, how fun would it be like just to make I don't know, I imagine you watch the shows like on a big screen, and you're pausing every frame and you're taking notes. That's what I always imagine. And I just wanted to like create this moment for you, which is like, wait, what? Is that me? Like I just
You
thought it
did. It was
was fun and
incredible.
silly.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wish I wish you had seen it first before someone messaged you, but it's all good. It's still just as fun. And it's again, it's a slight way of saying thank you for all you do, not, not only for Marvel, but for Sinners, for all the videos. And look, as far as all of the other amazing people who do what you guys do, who's to say that they will not show up in a future Marvel project? I can't say
Hey, there we
that,
go.
but
I told Heather, there's a Star Wars short story coming out that's got a character named after me coming out next month. So now I've got 2 stones on the gauntlet, and Heather's got to put me in a Star Trek and any Ninja Turtles or whatever. We got to get all 6. So I have some thoughts. First of all, did my character blip? This is for the wiki, by the way.
That's so funny. And by the way, that is a question we asked ourselves about every character in our
Okay, yeah.
you remember there was a period of time
Yeah.
where like that was always what things were about. And I remember because Shuri blipped, we landed on Riri would not have blipped. We were just trying to give them some contrast. But
Okay.
would Ryan Area have blipped? I would say probably not. If you've been this busy gathering black market materials, probably not.
Perfect. Okay. Who did I vote for, Ritson or Ross?
I believe based on all the discussions we had, very lengthy discussions about this exact fact in the writing room, if you landed on you were
I
an
was gonna say,
undecided voter.
voting records are not public information, so I don't think they would know that.
Okay, yeah, good point, good point, good point. Am I from the Chicago area, or did I move there from somewhere else? If I could move from my hometown of Peebles, Ohio, that would be great, but you're the professional, and I'm just the guy covering this.
I have good news for you, man. We did, in fact, Shinaka Haji made it a point in one of the screenplays. It said, note, he moved in from Ohio. So you were right on
Okay,
the-
great.
Yeah.
Ohio native. For the commenters, OH. All right, great. That's fantastic.
Oh.
That's all I think I need for now on that. Heather, do you have any other questions?
Oh yeah, important. Is if Ryan Airy is an MCU official, does that mean he still has Doug in the MCU?
It's a great question.
Oh, that's such a good. Where did we land on that one? I think one of our directors, was it Sam or Angela, had a major note on this. And what did they say, man? I think Doug, unfortunately, is currently serving in the raft for actions related to
Oh no.
undisclosed situation.
That
So
it is fitting. That
yeah,
does
poor
feel
Doug,
fitting.
man.
His mutated abilities.
Well, I'll let him know. He has a hard time even staying home alone, so he's not going to be like. Although I could see him be I do a pretty good Doug impression. I could totally see him being like, "Hey, so weren't you the president?" To the guy in the cell next to him. Yeah, that's incredibly what he would do. You want to hear a fun Doug thing from the other day?
Please.
Side note, this has nothing to do with you. This is just a fun Doug anecdote. There was a line in a script about Morgan Freeman, like he said he's a Morgan Freeman completionist. And then I improvised a Doug line about where I did a line from Shawshank Redemption. Again, I'm doing a Doug impression, right? Doug does his own voice.
Of course, of
And,
course.
and I just went, I forget what the line was. To this day, I have no idea what them 2 Italian ladies were singing about. And then my wife and I could not stop. We kept doing Doug Shawshank lines like off of each other. Doug liked it too, but he's more of a Forrest Gump guy. He thinks that they made the right choice with the Oscar
man.
that year.
That's funny. I don't think I had a feeling you did the voice, but just seeing it live is such a trip. That's awesome.
Oh no, I do an impression. Doug has his own.
Ryan, I think it's time.
Should we do Hear Me Out? Is it time?
It is.
Is it time for Hear Me Out? Sev, you can participate or you can react. It's completely up to you on Hear Me Out. It's the segment that nobody's heard of because it's our first episode.
I completely changed mine from what we talked about, Ryan, because of a topic we talked about on the show.
Okay, and I don't remember what you said.
Perfect. Great. Well, you go first.
Okay, here's my Hear Me Out. Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, is underrated.
In what way?
Now, I am not saying this movie is good. Obviously, it didn't turn out very well. But I think the ideas behind it are exceptional. And I think that today, if they were going to make that movie, right, they would make it correctly. And it's a story that I think enlarged the scale of what had come before, especially after Superman 3. I love the idea of Superman pursuing world peace, of like hitting this greater question. And that's why Christopher Reeve agreed to do the movie, that money. He wanted, like, he was a driving force behind the creative concept of that film. And the idea that this idea of nuclear war being a villain who is personified as this sort of twisted love child of Superman's DNA with Gene Hackman's voice. So it's a combination of Lex Luthor and the hubris of humanity with Superman's powers is a great metaphor for nuclear weapons. Obviously, there were a lot of problems in production. There were shots that were unfinished or reused. You know, Carol Co, I think, did it. Like, they had major budget problems from other flops, so it didn't come together well. But that should have been a terrific send-off. And there was a great line at the end of that movie when he gives a speech to the, I think it's to the UN, which is hilarious. Superman can just walk up and give a speech at the UN. And he tells everybody, I wish you could see the world how I see it, that we're all just one people. And to me, that's the essence of Superman, kind of distilled into a single line that maybe the other films didn't feel the need to go there and reflect. So I own the first VHS. I bought it when my home rental store was selling it, and I still have the first VHS I ever watched it on.
I love it. You didn't watch it enough times that you spent more renting it than it was worth?
No, because I was too busy not watching Space Jam because it was 9 years before it came out, so I didn't have the opportunity yet. All right, what do you got? What do you got for us, Heather? Hear me out.
All right, so I was speaking of renting films so many times that we spent more renting than buying the VHS itself. You inspired me, Sev, with an old thought I've long had about Back to the Future. And my hear me out theory is that George McFly has to know that his son time traveled in the past.
Whoa.
He has to know, because there are so many slips that Marty makes you know, while he's back, and he has to recruit his dad, right, to help him help him save everything. He mentions Darth Vader, which wasn't around yet. He mentions Calvin Klein. He mentions their carpet, you know, when that gets set on fire. But George knows that he can't acknowledge that he knows that his son time traveled, because that would mess with the space-time continuum. But that is
because he's a science fiction writer.
Yes, exactly. So he knows. So that is my theory.
And I've never heard that before. That's amazing. Sev, what do you think? Is it BWTF Die Hard? What do you think about the theory?
I just gotta go rewatch it now. I love this theory. That's so cool. I love it. That sounds amazing. All right, here's my hear me out. This is off the cuff because I didn't have time to prepare like you guys. I want to give a movie its flowers that I think doesn't get all flowers it probably deserves. And this is not a movie that's like underrated. People like this movie and respect it for the right reasons. But just looking back, it's kind of mind-blowing that the movie happened at all. And that movie is X-Men Days of Future Past.
All right.
I mean, think about it. We talk about movies like Spider-Man No Way Home because it brought all the old iteration of Peter Parkers in the same movie. But it was unheard of for a film that would equally share screen time with the new cast of the younger X-Men and the old X-Men, and totally undo essentially, like, I guess it was X-Men 3 that it undid, is now Cyclops. Like, it was like it course corrected an entire franchise without ever feeling like a retcon. And it did that while giving us, honestly, one of the better Charles and Eric dynamics in that film, because it was them being haunted by what they could have been. Like, I mean, I think that movie is, because nowadays it's like so often, again, Marvel is just beautifully like bringing back these old and new, and we saw it with Deadpool. I get a feeling we're going to see it with the new Avengers films. Like,
yeah, they set the template with Days of Future Past. Yeah.
I mean, we saw the chairs. We know a lot of people are coming back. So yeah,
I do love like when he shows up in the past, like he's in this already like violent, ridiculous. It's so good, man. That movie is good, man.
And I just love a good time travel story. I don't know if you guys have seen 12 Monkeys.
Yes.
Started. It's great. It's really good.
Oh, yeah.
Not the movie. I've seen the movie. I've seen the movie so many times because I couldn't think of a single movie I could watch instead of 12 Monkeys for the 12th time.
Have you seen the original French movie though that it's based on?
Yeah, no, I have not.
You should watch that.
I will.
So Space Jam,
I didn't know it was based on a French
and
movie.
the original one. Yep.
Yes.
Well, no, I'm going to watch Space Jam. Then
wild.
Or can I watch Space Jam 2 first and then go back and be like, oh, that was the Easter egg they were referencing, or is it going to confuse me?
You have to watch it. You have to respect the chronology, please.
No, honestly, I'm looking forward to watching Searching and Missing. You know, we covered, I think it was Missing when it came out, and we missed the boat on Searching. And it would actually, I was telling Heather this, it would stun everybody how few movies I get to see because I'm so busy, and I'm also trying to watch TV shows and read books. I try to read all the comics Heather makes. So, but This has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. I feel like I know you, and I'm still intimidated by your presence. Thank you so much for joining us.
Crazy, man. Thank
Yeah.
you guys not only for this, but thank you guys for all you do to, and this goes to you guys, this goes to all the great people at New
Yeah.
Rockstars and Heavy Spoilers, everyone. Like, thank you guys for continuing to celebrate not only the Marvel projects, but all the projects you guys cover. And you guys, you know, help shine a light on the hard work that goes in on the behind the scenes that most audience members will never even know to appreciate. So as a fan of you guys, and as someone who tries to, you know, put projects together and make them good, like, you know, I feel like we have a great relationship. So thank you guys.
No, again, you make it easy. Thank you so much for the show and everything else you've done. And thank you, Heather, for being here today.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right. Thank you, guys. Make sure you subscribe and do all the stuff and click the links and all the things in the comments and our merch. Thank you guys so much.